York Times columnist Maureen Dowd was in Ireland this week to receive an honorary doctorate from NUI Galway. She has written about American politics for more than 30 years and covered many presidential campaigns, winning a Pulitzer Prize along the way. I first asked Maureen Dowd how important this week's healthcare victory in the Supreme Court was for Barack Obama 4 months out from the presidential election.
It's an enormously important victory for him because he went against his top advisors, David Axelrod and Rahm Emanuel, to push health care in his first year. And it was a huge risk for him. And the problem was he never fully explained it or sold it, much to the dismay of people like Bill Clinton, who would have known how to use the bully pulpit that way. So it gives him a second chance to explain to people who would have benefited from it but didn't even know that and were turning on him why that's good for them.
Whatever the politics, today's decision was a victory for people all over this country whose lives will be more secure because of this law and the Supreme Court's decision to uphold it.
And also, it would have made him seem very ineffectual if he had lost that. It would have made him seem weak. But on the other hand, it's impossible to say how it will play out in the election because it could be good for Mitt Romney because it's really energized the Tea Party and the conservative base who may decide they are now in a fury that John Roberts, who was a reliably conservative vote, somehow ended up on the other side. So they may decide we have to get the Supreme Court where we want it. And the Tea Party could get very energized by this. So it may not necessarily completely help Obama in the long run.
In other words, I suppose it could give some Republicans and Conservatives a reason to unite around Romney in the campaign.
Well, Romney he raised $1 million within hours of the decision. And, you know, there were people outside the Supreme Court, conservative radio hosts just going nuts. And so I think, you know, when when conservatives are roused, they are really roused. So, you know, it could make things difficult.
I read one analyst during the week who said Obama wants this campaign to be about Romney's plans, whereas Romney wants it to be about Obama's record. Is that a fair analysis?
Well, you know, they want to paint Romney as very changeable, ambiguous. You can't tell what he stands for. You know, Romney has faced more rejection than any candidate I've ever seen in the 30 years I've covered politics. In the Republican primaries, the voters tried out every other candidate before they finally settled on him. You know, the Republicans who have endorsed him have done it very tepidly, and now voters are saying they're voting against Obama, not for Romney. And so, you know, but he seems to be able to absorb all that rejection, possibly because when he was a Mormon missionary, he went to Paris for 2 years and tried to convert Parisians to Mormonism and got completely rejected. And I think the Mormons thought that was a way to build character in him. So he's able to take a lot of rejection and keep on going, unlike most sensitive politicians. Talking to
Neil O'Dowd earlier in the week, you, I suppose, hedged your bets somewhat about the outcome of the election in November. At the same time, we read Karl Rove, a senior former Bush strategist, being quite bullish about Obama's chances and giving it to him quite comfortably at this stage.
Well, Karl Rove is one of the ones who is now getting very roused up by that Supreme Court decision. And I think the electoral map is very tough for Obama. He has not had a strong first term. You know, he wrote the most amazing narrative memoir in political history, and yet he lost the thread of the narrative of his own campaign. He just seemed kind of lost and not a strong. He wanted to be a transformational president. And that's where he has a second chance with the Supreme Court thing to show that he is someone who can present a narrative of government for good and helping the middle class. But if he can't now, he immediately tried to start explaining the healthcare plan again as soon as the decision was made. But he's got to become a better salesman in the ilk of Bill Clinton.
You wrote earlier in the year that the man who came to Washington on a wave of euphoria has had a presidency with all the joy of a root canal. Has it been that bad?
Well, the funny thing is, the only time I really saw him acting, you know, not spotlight, but like a warm human being and having a good time was when he was in the Moneygall pub. Other than that, he's turned the Situation Room into the seminar room. You know, he's very aloof. He and Romney actually are sort of more alike than different. They're very kind of inaccessible. You know, they have these exotic backgrounds that a lot of Americans have a hard time understanding. And Obama just never seems to be having fun as president, except when he was in Ireland.
And you made the point that both he and Clinton, and indeed Kennedy 49 years ago this very week, enjoyed a huge reaction and reception from people in Ireland. Does that somehow energise them as politicians?
Well, you know, they got the mother's milk for politicians, which is unadulterated love. I think particularly in the case of Bill Clinton and Obama, who grew up not knowing their fathers really, you know, to have that overwhelming love. It was the happiest I ever saw either of them when they were in Ireland.
Hillary Clinton's supporters credit, or perhaps blame is a better word, blame you for swinging a lot of Democrats behind the Obama candidacy, or gave you a lot of the credit for it 4 years ago. Do you have any regrets about that?
Well, I think that's giving me way too much credit. I have a problem with families, single families, keeping control of the presidency. If we'd had the Bushes and the Clintons just trading off the presidency every time, that wouldn't be very American, I don't think. But also, Hillary's problem was that she was a bad manager. She managed healthcare very badly, and she managed her campaign very badly, kind of setting it up in a way that was very dysfunctional. But she has now proven herself, you know, a really good Secretary of State, and I think that everyone really admires the job she's done there.
When the Obama presidency ends, either in 2016 or at the end of this year or early next year, will we have heard the end of Hillary Clinton and perhaps Joe Biden as well?
Well, I know a lot of people think that Hillary's very tired and just wants to ride into the sunset with Bill, but I definitely think that she could be, you know, a strong contender in 2016, and especially because the Republicans had this war on women during the primary where they were trying to roll back contraception rights for women and rights that women in America thought were long ago settled. And Hillary could use that as a glide path to the White House, I think.
And Joe Biden?
I think people think that Joe Biden doesn't want to run for president because, you know, he might be a little bit older, and they just think that this will cap his career. But I just think whenever anyone tells a man or a woman they can be president, it's like a virus in their blood. And I definitely think Joe Biden would love to be president. And I think he's planning his trip to Ireland, so you may see him soon.
And you don't think he'd be almost into his mid-70s in 2016, what, 72, 73?
Well, Ronald Reagan was 69 when he became president, and John McCain was 72 when he ran for president. And Joe Biden and Hillary, I think, both look great.
In the meantime, though, there is the election in November. Who do you think is going to win?
I don't predict, I just report.
Maureen Dowd hedging her bets today.